The Labour Party leadership crisis has intensified with Supreme Court verdicts sparking confusion and conflicting interpretations. Now, here's what's happening. The Apex Court set aside the Court of Appeal's judgment recognizing Julius Abure as the party's national chairman, citing lack of jurisdiction over internal party matters. Now, both Abure and Senator Nenadi Usman, who chairs the LP Caretaker Committee, claim the judgment favors them. Abure's faction argues the ruling upholds his leadership, while Usman supporters see it as a validation of their own leadership. On the contrary, Lamidi Apapa has also declared himself the party's national chairman, citing the Supreme Court judgment as justification. Now, this move, according to some, might just further complicate the party's, well, I call it internal workings now ahead of 2027. But joining me to speak more on this is Mark Adebayo, the national spokesperson for the Coalition of United Political Parties. He joins virtually from Bauchi State. I also have, of course, Nekabari. Annah is a legal practitioner. He is also joining virtually from Abuja. Gentlemen, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Let me start with you, Barrister Annah. I mean, given context or given interpretation to what we saw as regards the Supreme Court judgment, I mean, from a legal standpoint, you are a lawyer. Can you just shed light into what exactly this judgment, in clear terms, might entail?
Thank you very much. Before talking about what this judgment might entail, it's very important for us to understand where this whole case started from. It started with the Ondo State governorship election contest in the Labour Party. A man called Chief Ebesimi dragged the Labour Party to court contesting the issue that he's the authentic governorship candidate of the party. So the issue that arose that led us to this point is on the issue of who is the authentic governorship candidate of the Labour Party in the Ondo State Guba elections. It had nothing to do with who is the authentic chairman of the Labour Party. However, the courts went on the frolic of its own with the greatest respect to the honorable justices by holding that Julius Abure is the authentic national chairman of the Labour Party. The Court of Appeal went a step further to say that the court has no jurisdiction on this matter because it's a matter that has to do with the internal affairs of a political party. But the Court of Appeal, having found that, still went ahead and identified Julius Abure as the authentic national chairman of the Labour Party. It was based on that Nenadi Usman, the caretaker chairman of the Labour Party, went before the Supreme Court. And the argument before the court was, if the Court of Appeal has found that it has no jurisdiction to entertain the matter, does the Court of Appeal have the right to grant the ancillary reliefs? Well, the learned justices of the Supreme Court held that if the Court of Appeal has found correctly that the matter on the authentic leadership of the party is an internal affair of the party, then the Court of Appeal, including the High Court, the two courts below, were wrong to have made a pronouncement that Julius Abure Esquire is the authentic chairman of the Labour Party. Well, of course, politicians will continue to twist stories and spin the narratives in their favor. Julius Abure have come out to celebrate the victory. Nenadi Usman has come out to celebrate the victory. But if you look at pages 46 to 48 of the judgment of the Supreme Court of Nigeria on the issue, you will find that the Supreme Court dismissed, the Supreme Court agreed with the appeal filed by Nenadi Usman against that of Julius Abure and the Labour Party. So it will be out of place. It's a misnomer for Julius Abure to be celebrating the judgment of the Supreme Court that it was given in his favor. And it's also a misnomer for Lamidi Apapa to also come out to celebrate that based on the Supreme Court judgment, he's the authentic chairman of the Labour Party.
I mean,
because he was not even a party to that case.
But there's a clause. I mean, quite a number of them are sticking to, or some analysts would say that that judgment actually did leave a clause saying that it's not within the court's purview to delve into internal party affairs. And given
now, let me talk about that.
Okay.
Let me talk about that. Let me talk about that. As a matter of fact, in the case of Onoha versus Okafor, the Supreme Court stated clearly that the court will not interfere in the internal affairs of any political party. But there was an exception. The exception is when the party violates its own rules and regulations. So the question is, did Labour Party violate its own rules and regulation in setting aside Julius Abure leadership and creating a caretaker committee? Well, the judgment of the Supreme Court did not say so. So I do not see this as a victory for Julius Abure or for Lamidi Apapa. Please let us also note that the Supreme Court in this same judgment identified that each political party is like a club. And because it's like a club, members of the club are bound by the rules and regulations of their political party, and they must do all they can to obey it. Those who do not want to obey the rules and regulations and the decisions reached by their party are expected to leave the party. That is the standard.
All right.
That is the standard.
Okay.
So twisting the stories left and right is really out of place and does not do the system any good.
All right, let me bring in Mark Adebayo into the conversation. Now, Mark Adebayo, I mean, you've had some of the things Barrister Annah said. I mean, you're the spokesperson for a coalition of united political parties. One of the things he said is that what we are seeing largely is politicians playing politics. I mean, from a political standpoint, what is going on here within the Labour Party?
The lawyer, my colleague on this panel has, I agree more or less 100% with his position on this matter. He has adequately, analyzed the issues and came out with what I believe should be the correct position. But having said that, all we are witnessing, all we are seeing is part of the crisis orchestrated by external forces to create crisis and confusion among opposition political parties. As the 2027 election is nearing. So that is just it. All these crises. But one would have expected the Supreme Court to actually make a kind of a declarative judgment. But I believe that the summary of the totality of the Supreme Court judgment is to tell Labour Party to go back home and settle issues among themselves. So I believe that is what the Supreme Court has said. But if you look at the nitty-gritty of what the honourable justices have delivered, it will be that the caretaker committee of the Labour Party should continue to lead the party. That will be the reasonable conclusion in this case. So for any other person to be coming up to be shouting or to celebrating that they are leaders of the party, I don't think that is here nor there. I believe that Senator Nenadi Usman should be the proper person to now take over and begin to manage the affairs of Labour Party, pending the National Convention to be planned, programmed by the caretaker committee. That is it. But we must not lose the sight of the fact that there are active efforts by external forces to make sure that political parties are
Mr. Adebayo, I'm going to stay with you on this. You keep saying there are active efforts by external forces to destabilize, if I got you correctly, the workings within the Labour Party. Can you be more specific? And even if there are names to these forces, within the party that you feel might be responsible for this, what do you mean by external forces? Can you please elaborate?
I will simply point at the ruling party, simply, especially from the office of the president. I will say that what is happening, we see what is happening in PDP, we see the same thing happening in Labour Party, and now it's a major attack on opposition political parties in this country. It's a concentrated attack on opposition political parties to make sure that none of the parties is at peace prior to 2027 general elections. That is it. You can see that more or less, except for the sharp legal minds that be able to see through the judgment of the Supreme Court, to the layman, it's quite confusing. It's quite confusing. So the summary of it is that, okay, Labour Party, go back home and settle and make peace among yourselves. That is what. But who is going to make the peace? It's going to be the caretaker committee led by Senator Nenadi Usman. That is my own take on this issue. So we should not belabor the fact. We should not belabor all these issues. Everybody should just respect the law, respect the rules or within the internal party rules of Labour Party, and of course respect the judgment of the Supreme Court of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. There is no higher court than that, and everybody must go home and make sure that they are there strictly to the letter, to the spirit and letter of that judgment. That is where we can have some modicum of peace in Labour Party. And the caretaker committee must up his game and do the right thing immediately. If anybody is confused about the interpretation of the Supreme Court judgment, they should approach the court again for clear interpretation. But it's there that the leadership crisis or whatever internal affairs of a political party should belongs in the party, and that the court should have nothing to do with it. And I think everybody should learn from that.
All right, Mr. Adebayo, we'll definitely come back to you. We'll also come back to you, Barrister Annah. But quickly, let's go on a break. Once we return, we'll delve deeper into this matter. Stay with us. Well, welcome back, and of course it's still Politics HQ on News Central Television, and we are discussing the internal leadership crisis within the Labour Party, of course as follow-up to the recent Supreme Court verdict. Well, before we get back into the conversation, let's take a listen to what a faction of the party did say or interpret as regards that ruling.
Alhaji Bashiru Lamidi Apapa, who is the most senior deputy national chairman of our great party, and in consonance with our party constitution's Article 14(2)(a), B, hereby takes over the running of affairs of our great party with effect from today, Wednesday, the 9th day of April 2025, in acting a capacity, and Alhaji Farouk Umar Ibrahim as National Secretary.
Well, there you, of course, just saw a factional leader of the party. That's Alhaji Lamidi Apapa declaring himself as the factional or as the chairman of the party. But I would like to bring Barrister Annah back into this. For some, I mean, you sort of tried to give clarity to that judgment, but for some, they would say it appears like the judgment further complicated issues within the party, because if you are saying, you know what, it's an internal party affair, go and sort it out, and now we are seeing different factions declare themselves, you know, as the leading faction of the party. How does this resolve matters within the Labour Party? And from your, you know, legal standpoint, what do you think should be, whether, you know, substantive chairman, if I may use that word, of the party at the moment, based on that verdict?
Well, thank you very much for that question. You see, it's important for us to know certain fundamentals in looking at these issues. The court is not a Father Christmas. The court will only look at the issues before it. The issue, even in the cross appeal brought by the Labour Party, is the issue of jurisdiction. And the court has held in a plethora of decided decisions that when it has to do with the internal affairs of a political party, there is not going to be judicial interference except where the interference is necessary because the party has failed to obey its own rules and regulations. There is no pronouncement by the Supreme Court that the process that brought Nenadi Usman as the caretaker chairman of the Labour Party is flawed. That clearly means that Nenadi Usman, by the judgment of the Supreme Court, and being the appellant herself, is the beneficiary of the judgments of the Supreme Court. Lamidi Apapa's pronouncement has no basis in law, and that of Julius Abure also has no basis in law. While I've not been briefed by Nenadi Usman, we as lawyers have a responsibility as ministers in the Temple of Justice to tell the truth and also encourage others to tell the truth. Law is a vehicle for social engineering, and we as social engineers have a duty to ensure that the foundations of our social system is justice, what is fair, and what is right. Their lordships, the honorable justices of the Supreme Court, have stated the justice of the case. But please note that politicians and the law are not cement twins. They are not friends. Of course, politicians will continue to push the limits of the judicial system to see how far they can go and how far the system can benefit them. But the judgment is the judgment. And we expect political parties and politicians to be honorable. And that is what the last pages of this judgment says.
All right.
In fact, the justices said that if your tenure has ended as an executive member of a political party, you should do the honorable thing and bow out. That is what the law is. The prophecy of what the court will do, in fact, and nothing more pretentious, is what the law is.
All right.
And the Supreme Court of Nigeria represents what the law is.
Barrister Annah, let me come in for a moment and, of course, bring in Ceekay Igara. Is the National Vice Chairman of the Southeast Zone of the Labour Party. He joins virtually from Abia State. Thank you for your time, Ceekay Igara. It's great to have you. I mean, you're a member of the Labour Party. We are discussing the internal issues within your party. I mean, let me ask you first and foremost, what exactly is going on within the Labour Party? Are you united?
This evening, and the question you ask is very clear and simple. The party is not divided. Barrister Julius Abure remains the national chairman of the Labour Party in Nigeria. I listened to the barrister there. I mean, it's very unfortunate that he can come here and talk about what he doesn't know about. Labour Party, we know. He's not talking, he's talking from point of ignorance. Because
sorry,
I'm not sure
can I come in? Can I come in, Ceekay? You said as of now, Barrister Julius Abure remains the chairman, according to you.
The national chairman of the party,
okay,
yes.
So on what basis exactly?
Number one, up until today, no court of competent jurisdiction has cancelled the convention of 27th March 2024.
Does that include the Supreme Court's verdict that recently happened?
The Supreme Court vested the authority on the party procedure and constitution, not on an individual. It's very unfortunate that this thing is being misinterpreted. He just affirmed, Supreme Court just affirmed the supremacy of the party, supremacy of the constitution and the procedures of the party. And in this case, Julius Abure have not even served the first tenure. He was just merely concluding the tenure of the late chairman, we just took about 6 months before the next insertion, extended it till June last year. Before June last year, there was this convention around March. And that alone confers the authority. And everything was done in line with the constitution of the party, giving INEC 21 days notice, making sure that all legal procedures were observed. And that exactly confers the authority on Julius Abure as the national chairman. And it's very unfortunate that people are misinterpreting. Some of them don't even have an idea of the procedure of the party.
Just so you know, Mr. Ceekay Igara, we have a copy of the CTC, and of course the legal practitioner we have on the program this evening, talking about Barrister Annah, also has a copy of that certified true copy, of that judgment. But you insist that Barrister Abure still remains your chairman. So what do you now make of what we see Nenadi Usman and our team, which comprise of the Abia State Governor and Peter Obi, I mean, what they did recently, having a meeting and even going to the INEC office? What would you call that?
Number one, our constitution says it is only the national chairman and the national secretary that can call for any national meeting. In the absence of the convention, it is the NEC that takes decision. What and who constitutes the NEC? The NEC is all the state chairmen and their secretaries, governors and vice deputy governors produced by the party, House of Rep Speaker and the deputy produced by the party, Senate President and Vice produced by the party, and the President of the Federation and the Vice produced by the party. In that instance, what you had at Transcorp Hilton, it was only His Excellency, the Governor of Abia and the Vice, and members of the NEC, and they cannot take decision for the NEC. That is number one. Number two, even the group that brought Nenadi Usman to bear is illegal. It's not a legal organization because it was not formed by the party.
Okay.
And that's why the party, if you watch, you cannot see any state chairman there. You cannot see any state secretary there. You cannot see any member of the National Working Committee in those gatherings.
Okay.
So it's an illegality.
Okay.
And the party does not recognize it. The constitution of the party does not recognize it. So that is why any day, anytime, we still believe Abure is a national chairman, and that's exactly what the law says.
Okay, so just hold on a second. Let me bring back Barrister Annah, because, I mean, the Supreme Court judgment actually did override the judgments of the lower court. So, Barrister Annah, I mean, I would like you to still speak on this issue. Mr. Ceekay, who is the National Vice Chairman of the Southeast Labour Party Zone, has said that maybe, from his own interpretation, it says Abure still remains chairman, even though from a legal standpoint, you have insisted that doesn't cease. And we know that the judgment or the verdict of the Supreme Court overrides lower court. So what's going on here? I mean, from a legal standpoint.
You see, Julius Abure, Esquire, fully understands that the convention they are referring to is faulted. If it was not flawed, he will not be looking for a judicial pronouncement to validate the National Convention of the party. And he got that at the High Court. He got that at the Court of Appeal. But the Supreme Court said, no, don't do that. It's the internal affairs of the party. The Supreme Court made it abundantly clear, that members of a political party should be willing to be guided by the rules and regulations of the party. That's what the law is. That is what the law is as of today. And what the Supreme Court have said is law. Now, who was the beneficiary of the Supreme Court said that the decisions of the High Court and the decisions of the Court of Appeal are hereby set aside. You see, the only reason why we are having issues of this nature is because of the absence of some sort of clarity in the judicial pronouncement. I expect, and it's my humble suggestion to the learned justices of all courts throughout Nigeria, including the Supreme Court of Nigeria, to ensure that there is some level of clarity in judicial pronouncements. In my opinion, this judgment is clear. In my opinion, this judgment is direct. However, you know that politicians will continue to twist and spin. But again, as politicians continue to twist and spin to try to bring the court into disrepute, to try to ridicule the pronouncements and hard work of our justices across Nigeria, the court should also rise to the occasion and ensure that there is some sort of clarity in judicial pronouncement, so that situations of this nature would not continue. All right,
Barrister Annah, thank you so much. We need to go on a quick break. Once we return, I'll bring in Mark Adebayo, and maybe we'll switch the conversation slightly to what we hear as regards a coalition ahead of 2027. Stay with us.
Labour Party scored 10 million votes plus, reduced to 6.1 million. Now that the political climate is in search of so-called another platform, the only platform they should be talking about, besides those that I had earlier mentioned, should be Labour Party, not another party that scored nothing close to 100,000 votes. We should hold this. We should use this. Labour Party is the party to be in. I mean, why bring in a party that has no governor, no senate, is it something like that, and a lot less than 1 million votes? Why? If you ask, is there something about Labour Party that they are afraid of? Yes. Is there something in Labour Party that they don't want Nigerians to enjoy? Yes. Is there certain goods that and positive changes that Labour Party will bring to Nigeria, yes, and they really, really want to avoid it. Now that we're back on course, please hold this instructive argument. We are the ones with the votes that was reduced to this. So if anybody is looking for any other platform, it is Labour. And don't let this go, please.
Well, you just, of course, saw Yusuf Dati there, the vice presidential candidate in 2023 Labour Party, for Labour Party, that's doing the presidential election of that year. Well, I still have my guest with me, but I would like to, of course, direct my question now to Mark Adebayo. Now, Mark, there are talks as regards some political bigwigs, forming a coalition. We've seen, aside even the coalition, we've seen some jump ship. We've seen the likes of El Rufai join the SDP, and then we've seen the former vice president of Nigeria, Atiku Abubakar, also do same in terms of talk about a mega coalition ahead, not change party, but mega coalition. Now, for many Nigerians that are observing this, they'll say this seems to be a repetition of history. We remember when the APC too was on the opposition side, something like this too is playing out. So it seems like they are playing, the ruling party, their game. So my question to you is this. This coalition, or mega coalition as it were, ahead of 2027, what do you make of it as a politician?
A coalition is a necessity in this circumstance. Having realized the fact that one political party may not be able to go it alone in terms of contesting against the APC in 2027, it's necessary. In fact, it is extremely strategic to come together and form a powerful coalition to be able to contest against the APC in 2027. That's very, very important for us as an opposition. Now, the talks are ongoing, and it's an ongoing development. It's a work in progress, and I can assure you that everything will be perfected in due time, and the necessary things will be done. Of course, there will be sacrifices that will have to be made. There will be people who will have to sort of sacrifice their political ambitions to be able to have at least to line up behind one candidate so that we'll be able to confront the ruling party. That's the best way out. How it will go, how it will end, how everything is going to sort of end up, imagine. Well, it's still talk in progress, it's still work in progress, and everything will be perfected. All the crises that are being orchestrated in political parties, in the opposition political parties, somehow we will be able to overcome all that and come together and speak out with one voice and file up behind one candidate and make sure that we do something far much better than what the APC is giving to Nigerians. Definitely, we have something better than the APC.
Okay, now, I'll come back to you. I'll come back
from the land, unemployment and insecurity from the land. This current government has failed and failed woefully in the area of the economy, in the area of security, in the area of international diplomacy. There is nothing to write home about. So we need to come in.
All right, I'll come back to you, Mr. Igara. Let me bring back, of course, Ceekay into this conversation right now. Now, Mr. Ceekay Igara, I mean, your party, the Labour Party, I want to ask you a point-blank question. I mean, this talks about a coalition, even though we just played a sound on tape, of your party's vice presidential candidate in the last election. What are we hearing about this coalition? Is the Labour Party looking in that direction?
The presidential candidate of the party is not a spokesman of the party. He cannot speak on behalf of the party. As far as I know, the party has not taken any decision with regard to joining a coalition or not. But I know in political dynamics, very likely that there will be coalition when the candidates emerge. But as for now, such decisions have not been taken by Labour Party, and I cannot stand here to tell you that we are going to join coalition or not, since it has not been discussed by NEC, it has not been discussed by NWC, as to confirm which direction to follow. So that is why we are talking about supremacy of the party. In our party constitution, they don't speak for the party. The party has a program, a project, a procedure. The national chairman is the leader of the party. While in some other political parties, let's say it is the presidential candidate or the national chairman. Everybody should study this constitution and then stop confusing Nigerians. Here, we completely agree with the Supreme Court. That is why we are doing things in line with the constitution of our party. Some of them are confused because they just joined the political party and they're still coming with the old knowledge, old ideas of their former constitution. So that is why some of us who are here, we have studied the constitution very closely and we believe that's the only way to go. And that's why we are in total agreement with what the Supreme Court said about supremacy of the party.
Mr. Igara, you insist that Julius Abure remains the chairman of the party, but what Nigerians have seen play out is apparently about 3 factions claiming leadership of the party. And I remember at the beginning of this conversation, I asked, is the Labour Party united? And you affirmed, you said it is united, but what we are seeing on ground doesn't reflect that. So my question is, if truly, according to you, Julius Abure is the chairman, are there attempts to find a way to sort of unify these various factions?
Just going to have this nonsense.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you clear now.
Okay, so I'm asking, so what attempts are being made to bring about unity within the party? I think we're having a bit of difficulty there connecting with Mr. Igara. We'll definitely bring him back once we are able to. But let me come back to you, Barrister Annah. Now, you talked about judicial interpretations, particularly when it comes to what I call it political affairs. Now, away from even the Labour Party crisis, many question, a lot of people are asking is the role of the judiciary, particularly in contemporary times, in the politics of Nigeria, particularly when it comes to resolving issues. A typical example is what we are seeing, for instance, in Rivers State. So my question to you is this: is the judiciary at the moment really helping the political climb?
Thank you again for that very brilliant question. When judgments of court are given, remember, it's a tussle, it's a war. When you go to court, somebody will win and somebody will lose. And so it's a natural tendency for those who lose in a contest in court to begin to make different kind of allegations. Some will say the judges ate bribe. Some will say a big man somewhere influenced the judgment. But the very unfortunate thing is that lawyers, legal practitioners, and some of them senior advocates of Nigeria, renowned lawyers, will come on television and lambast the courts that they serve as ministers in. Well, if you even take a good look at some of these cases and some of the decisions arrived at, you will see that the argument of some of these lawyers who come on television to insult the judges and ridicule the judiciary, you will see that even their arguments before the courts are flawed arguments. But instead of going back to do some self-introspection, that what they have done, the arguments they have put before the court is not strong enough, of course they'll run back to their clients and put the blame on one person or the other. You see, it is time for the judiciary to do a self-cleansing. Every lawyer in this country is a minister in the temple of justice. And the temple must cleanse itself and must call lawyers who do not do a great job in preparing their cases, but do a fantastic job in trying to mold public opinion on television and insult the judiciary. These gentlemen must be called to order. I am very sure that if it's a young lawyer or a lawyer who doesn't have a strong family name is doing all of this, this person would have been dragged before the disciplinary committee today. But nothing is done to these very big boys in the legal profession who are dragging the legal profession into disrepute. My message to these gentlemen tonight is this: this profession was built by our forebears. They brought it into a level where when you hear that a lawyer is passing, you do not even look at the lawyer in his face, you go to peep at the lawyer through the window. These persons inherited the system. But what they are trying to do today to fit their own narrative, which is a product of their weak arguments before the court, is to ridicule the judiciary and to say the judiciary has been captured.
Okay.
If the judiciary had been captured, they won't even have a day in court.
Okay, I mean, talking about that, let's digress and talk about specifically now the declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers State. This has continued to, of course, elicit reaction. Just today, we saw protest again in Rivers State, women coming out, you know, in that regard. Many questioning the validity of that state of emergency, particularly the clause that has to do with suspending the governor, where, of course, the president did say since with the declaration of state of emergency, the governor be suspended, you know, or relieved of his duties temporarily, and a sole administrator was put in place. I mean, from, you know, your legal standpoint, I mean, what do you make of this declaration by Mr. President, the state of emergency, Rivers State, and the suspension of the governor?
As a lawyer, I'm careful to talk about a matter that is already in court. That will be sub judice. But my message is very clear. Where an action has been taken by the president and somebody or a group of persons believes that that action is unconstitutional, it's illegal, the best way to ventilate your grievance is not on the streets. The best way to ventilate your grievance is not on television, on radio, on newspapers. The best way to ventilate your grievance is in court. But before going to court, it's important that you do a good job. Put together a good team, not people who are so crazy about social media, and ensure that you go to court, you marshal out your points before the court, and see how the court will decide.
Okay, maybe I
anything contrary to that, anything contrary to that will be a call to anarchy.
Okay, maybe I should put it this way.
No, what I'm telling you is that this matter is sub judice. It's already before the court.
No, I'm saying the
issue of the validity of the suspension of His Excellency the Governor of Rivers State.
This is where I'm going. Let's leave Rivers State out of it. Let's look at what the law says concerning any precedent in Nigeria and the declaration of a state of emergency. I'm not talking about Rivers State now. I'm talking about the Constitution. In layman words, in clean terms, what it says concerning the declaration of a state of emergency, and if at all, the suspension of an elected official.
Well, the Constitution provides that in certain occasions, a state of emergency can be declared. The Constitution of Nigeria also reposes that power in the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. However, there has been some arguments left and right that there are lacunas in how the president should go about in exercising his powers. Some persons have argued that he can exercise his powers by suspending the governor and all elected officials. Others have said no, the Constitution does not give you that right. But like I said to you, that matter is now in court, and we are very sure that the court will make a definitive pronouncement on the issue. My point is, we must not, as legal practitioners, join the laymen into calling for anarchy in our country. We should continue to trust the judicial system. Even when you do not agree with a judgment, there is a procedure for appeal. For you to go upstairs to the 3 wise men and subsequently to the 5 wise men. Let us please note that the judgments of court will not always favor us, but please, when it favors you, it's a victory for democracy and the rule of law. But when it doesn't favor us, we go ahead and say somebody has manipulated the system. Let us trust the system. And I urge the media to play a role in trying to ensure that we trust the system, the judiciary as an independent arm of government.
Annah.
Yes, please.
Barrister Annah, I'm sorry to, of course, cut your line of thought, but I'm made to understand that we need to go on a quick break. Definitely once we return, we'll conclude. Stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us. It's still Politics HQ on News Central Television, and of course we are still discussing issues as regards the leadership within the Labour Party in lieu of the Supreme Court verdict, the recent one. And of course I still have my guest with me. Barrister Annah, thank you for staying with me. Now, just a quick one before we conclude the program this evening. You kept insisting, in your line of thought, that Nigerians still need to find a way to trust the judiciary in spite of everything? Because for people in the streets, they'll say it's the last hope for the common man. But I'm going to put this question to you, even as a lawyer yourself, is justice still blind?
Thank you. Well, I smile because so many people are asking that question. The truth of the matter is that justice is still blind. But please let us note that that is why a provision has been made that even when justice is delivered blindly, sometimes errors of judgment can be made. And that is why there is a process of appeal. For a party who has lost in court to study the judgment of the court and say, okay, here are my grounds of appeal. I have grounds A, B, C, D, E, F. And you take it to the court above, before the 3 wise men, and the 5 wise men, as the case may be. And you ventilate your grievance, and you explain why the judgment of the court below is wrong. This practice, where lawyers continue to make members of the public believe that justice is being sold because they have lost a case in court, is wrong. You will not find this happening anywhere in the world. Lawyers should spend more time in their libraries preparing for their cases instead of spending more time on social media and on newspapers.
Can I also come in here? There have been cases also where people also question if certain judgments are fair, right? Particularly looking at the political landscape. You look at the interpretation and then you ask yourself, but really, what does this feel fair? Does it not look like maybe some sort of political influence played?
Please give me one case. Give me one example. Give me one example of a judgment of the court that you think is not fair. Give me one example, and let's do the analysis.
So there have been cases, for instance, tribunal cases where politicians go to court.
Give me an example. Give me an example.
I'm sorry. They go to court and then there are interpretations that are given and people are asking that, but this wasn't the case. So one of such that still keeps being talked about is the last election that had to do with the Beavers, for instance, where at the end of the day they said, oh, when it comes to result coalition, it's still at the discretion of INEC, right? So my question is, and I'm still going to put it to you, because that is the feeling of many Nigerians. It's not like they do not trust the judiciary, but I'm still going to ask, is justice still fair, or has it become a situation of the highest bidder?
My answer to the question is that justice is still done in Nigeria. But please let us note that many of the people who come on television to talk about judgments of courts have not even read the processes filed before these courts and tribunals. Most of the people who come on television to talk about judgments of courts do not even spend their time to understand what the facts are. What are the arguments before the court? Did the lawyers in presenting their cases before the court make one error or the other that was fatal to their case? Please, it's important for us to know that the court is a court of law, a court of facts. Therefore, even if a situation on a normal basis would have favored you, but you do not do a good job in presenting your case before the court, you are going to lose the case because of the judicial system we operate. It's an accusatorial system.
All right.
So you have the responsibility to present your case before the court.
All right, Barrister Annah, thank you so much. Quickly, let's quickly take the final thoughts of Ceekay Igara on this matter.
For having me. I'm happy with the statement made by the lawyer there. The lawyer didn't want to admit that there are cases, there are justices, there are some judgments that cause more confusion than staying normal. Take, for instance, the issue of the Supreme Court justice over Labour Party and Abure and Nenadi Usman. Unfortunately, the judgment caused more confusion in the sense that they were asking for the jurisdiction of the court to determine And the lawyer there is supporting that. Even when you don't have the locus, when you are not the authority to get things done, that if you come together, you can get things done, even when it's against the Constitution. So he has indicted himself by saying that what they do in court are normal. But in this case, if you flout the Constitution of any organization, ab initio, what you are doing is nothing. You are doing nothing. So the justices should come out with clear judgments that everybody will understand that this matter is this way and is this way. And then we go on.
We need to go. And I want to believe that the lawyer actually did give interpretation based on, of course, a legal standpoint as regards what was obtainable on the CTC. But I'd like to say a big thank you to you, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure having you on the program. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you once again. It's been a pleasure. Well, this, of course, is where we drop the curtains. In case you missed out, you can actually catch up on our YouTube platform. That's at News Central TV. You can also choose to follow us across social media with the same handle on your screen. You can choose to follow me personally at Adebayo. Until I come your way again, good night.